people that I've met today, and I just want to give another round of applause for yourselves for being here. So I want you to imagine a dragon is just outside the city, and you're hearing this screeching sound, it's yelling in the background, you're seeing fire just plume up in the background, and your community, however you're defining it in this scenario, is no longer safe. What do? Do you escape, as I'm sure a lot would want to, and go somewhere that you think is safe? Do you defend the city and strengthen its walls? Or do you attack and try to weaken the dragon before it gets to you? Any path you choose has its own risks and its rewards, but something must be done about the dragon. By 2010, I discovered my city when, after working nearly full-time in college, became the first in my family to graduate with a bachelor's degree. Thank you. I knew in that moment that this would give me a chance to go on and earn more than my parents. And I wanted to give that same chance to other young people with stories similar to mine. And so shortly after graduating, I got that chance when I became an 8th grade teacher in a community in New Orleans. This is me in my classroom. And I had an experience that changed my life forever. I met a young man named Ricky Summers. He was 16 in the 8th grade, and by that time closed a 4-year learning gap in reading and math. And Ricky worked hard because he wanted to become the first in his family to make it to and through college like I did. But Ricky suffered a lot of financial hardship, and in the course of his 8th grade year, started selling drugs. In the spring before he goes on to high school, he's murdered by a peer during one of these drug deals. And we learned at his funeral, based on his ACT projections at the time, he was on track to receive something called TOPS in Louisiana, which was the equivalent of a full tuition scholarship to any state college. So had Ricky lived, he might have had the chance to realize his dream of going to college, possibly for free. This experience pushed me to the edge and made me wonder, what could I possibly build with others so that more potential like Ricky's is not lost in communities and in a country as well-resourced as ours is? And so what was my response? It was to reimagine the future of school in a community like New Orleans, possibly the country. And I didn't know anything about how I was going to do that, but I thought a school might be the clearest bet. I didn't know, as I said, anything about building a school from scratch. Who does? But I knew I cared a lot about economic mobility and this idea of helping young people go on and earn more than their parents. And so if that's what economic mobility is, it was some groundbreaking research that came out from a group of economists that showed in the 1940s, it was basically certain a child would go on and do this. But you look at today and the odds are a coin toss. And to paint this picture more bleakly, in a community like New Orleans, a child who grows up there and looks like Ricky is earning tens of thousands of dollars less than their white peers. Tens and thousands of dollars less. This became my dragon. And so I wondered, could a school change this? And it turned out that at the time, and this was 2014, 2015, New Orleans was calling itself the Silicon Bayou because it was projecting to add tens and thousands of family-sustaining jobs that didn't require 4-year college degrees, but something more than a high school diploma. And it didn't have enough of a homegrown talent pipeline to meet that need. And so the question became, could we build a high school that not only got young people into great colleges that worked for them, but also painted a path directly into these types of jobs and get them a chance to earn more than their parents a lot earlier in their lives? And so our focus became industry-recognized credentials, and if we can offer enough pathways to these types of opportunities, maybe, just maybe, we might move this needle further faster. And so as an example of something we do, you see on the left, there's a credential called CCNA that is used for someone who wants to go into computer networking to become a network support technician. And so there's a very clear vertical there. It's entry-level job, $75,000 to start. And at 18 years old, could be a game changer for a lot of the kids. Any 18-year-old, I think. And certainly the 18-year-olds that we serve at Voodoo. And so we did it. We graduated our first class in 2021. About 75% of the students went on to four-year colleges. And then about a quarter actually went on to some of these jobs and became some of the first young people hired directly from high school at companies like Oxford Health, Entergy, Lucid, making above the average living wage of a New Orleanian in their communities and completely proving a new possible. And it's inspiring. I think of a student like Zach. He came to us as a very average student. I think he's okay with me saying that. He was a part of our founding class, and he took a liking to 3D printing, which was a course that we offered at the school at the time. And in his sophomore year, he earned what is called an Autodesk Inventor certification. It's a CAD software that most people usually aren't exposed to until they graduate college. And that paved the way to him getting a paid internship while he was in high school that then led to him getting a full-time job offer at graduation from a company called Entrescan in New Orleans, which is an additive manufacturing company. And so at 18, he was the first person hired directly from high school at this company as a 3D printing specialist, earning more than his mother was at the time, which ended up being game-changing for him in his life. And it made us very curious, hey, could we do this with more? So I'm not going to bore you with the details of how I got from New Orleans to Vancouver. But even though the communities are thousands of miles apart, the young people growing up in them face very similar challenges, as well as opportunities, as our county projects will add tens and thousands of jobs over the next 20 years in several high-growth, high-wage fields. And so the question is, can a high school meet this need? That is what we're up to at a new high school that just opened here in August called Rooted School Vancouver. We are still recruiting students, so if you hear anything that I am saying and know someone who might benefit, please send them to us. And then we also need your time. We need talent. We need treasure. And so if anything that I'm sharing inspires you today, please reach out and let's figure out how to get you involved. We have many Zachs at Rooted, but the dragon still haunts my city. While I've opened or helped open schools in different parts of the country and have talked to hundreds of students and families about their hopes, their dreams, their needs, it's become clear to me that there's so much that influences whether a child will go on and actually earn more than their parents outside of the school. And nothing painted this picture clearly for me as in COVID-19 when our students were asked to come back to school and they just weren't. And when we were calling families to ask what was going on, the story was often, we needed to take up a job to help make ends meet. My mother lost her job, and so I'm really one of the only ones that can take care of the family. And working that job was more important than going to school on a given day. And so our team started wondering if we truly believe that a school and a community is the catalyst for transforming a young person's life, what else could we possibly do? What stone are we not turning over? And so enter something called guaranteed income. There are numerous studies around the world that show that direct cash transfers, or literally giving people cash directly, is one of the most efficient and effective ways to reduce, if not eliminate, deep child poverty. Yet, it is a strategy that is seldomly used in our communities across the US. And so, after a study we conducted of our own with a group out of University of Pennsylvania Center for Guaranteed Income Research, we set out to launch our own what is called a randomized control trial. It's the gold standard of research to understand what is the impact of doing something like this in a school. And so over a 2-year span of time, we're working with 470 students, with a portion getting $50 a week for 40 weeks of the school year. We call this the $50 study. And at this scale, it's the largest and first largest and most rigorous study of its kind, not only in the US, but in the world, exploring this question. And we're starting to get some early findings that are really interesting. We are learning when you give young people cash, they actually spend it in similar ways to adults, believe it or not. And they're spending it on things like groceries, transportation, and retail, which suggests there's really some deep unmet needs in homes across our communities that schools alone just can't fix. And so we're thinking there are so many pilots like this around the US right now, over 100, and many more that have existed for decades. But very few actually go on to become enduring policies in communities. They're usually one-off stints, and then they peter out because of a lack of funding and support. And so we're wondering, can something like this, the $50 study, actually make that leap from a pilot to a sustained and enduring policy in communities across the country? And so that is the dream. That is the dream of a project like this beyond the schoolwork that we do. And so starting next fall, so a year from now, we'll be working with 800 students in select communities across the US on what we call a longitudinal study. So we're no longer questioning whether this can actually have an impact on their lives. We know that it can. We're now looking to see whether this small cash infusion at this inflection point in a young person's life can actually lead to some more positive outcome in the future, i.e., their likelihood of persisting through college, their likelihood of obtaining that good paying job, the likelihood of actually being prepared for college. There's no research like this in the world right now, and we're really excited for what we learn. And so, as I close, I'm really excited for what this project could look like at scale, because if we do it, I'm certain we can slay my dragon. And in closing, I'm showing you a glimpse of what I think could be the future of work like this. This is a snapshot of my fantasy football team. Humble brag, I'm number 1 right now in my league. You can ask me later for tips. But one of the reasons why I'm just crushing everyone is because of predictive analytics. So this idea that for each player that's listed, there's historical data that we have available for that player that then can predict how they're likely to show up on any given week and any given game. And so I can't help but wonder, we can't help but wonder if maybe a path to getting more young people in communities like ours to go on and earn more than their parents is maybe grounded in something like this. What if we could take the data not only from families, the data from interventions like what I've talked about today, and coupled with emerging technology that's available to us now that wasn't some 20 years ago, and really change the game for kids in a way that has just never been realized in a generation. That's what we think is the potential and possibility of our work. My name is Jonathan Johnson. I'm with Rooted School of Vancouver here. Thank you so much for listening.